He walked amongst the trial men in a suit of shabby gray. A cricket cap was on his head, and his steps seemed lightly gay. But I never saw a man who looked so wistfully at the day. I never saw a man who looked with such a wistful eye upon the little tent of blue, which prisoners call the sky, and at every drifting cloud that went still so high. So that's a piece of my most favorite poem of all time, The Ballad of Raugh by Oscar Wilde. So that's obviously poetry. Oscar Wilde is a poet. Now, I guarantee when I say poetry, you start thinking of that, and you start thinking of Shakespeare, and you start thinking of all of these poets that we study in school. And if we go by the literal definition, poetry is, nope. There we go, okay, sorry. Poetry is a literary work that has feeling behind it. That's basically all it is. Yes, it pushes boundaries on the literary elements and all that stuff, but basically it's just words that have feeling behind them. But is that all poetry truly is? Poetry can be so much more to each and every one of us if we make it more. To me, poetry can be things like going outside on a nice, hot summer day, and it's nice and dark and there are clouds everywhere right before it's gonna rain. Not just any rain though, but like the thunderstorm to end all thunderstorms. That one storm that is gonna be talked about for the rest of the decade. That thunderstorm. You walk out and it's dark and there are gusts of wind and you smell the rain on its way. You see flashes of light in the distance and you hear the thunder. That's poetry. That's being in the moment and experiencing a moment you don't want to end. Another example could be laying in grass, looking at the sky while clouds go by, and you watch leaves dance off the trees as they go to the ground. You feel one with the earth as the grass touches you, comforts you, brings you to a sense of pure reality. That's poetry, y'all. Poetry can be things as simple as seeing a friend that you haven't seen in a really long time, or wearing a bow tie and feeling like you can take on the world. This is what poetry is. This is what poetry should be. Poetry is not just words on a page, but there's something that made the poet put the poems there. The words that are on the page have a meaning behind them. It's not just a random compilation of words. So I challenge you, start thinking poetically. The easiest way to do this is going to be to find your cause, whatever cause it may be. Throughout the TED Talks, I've heard lots of people say a lot of things. Those could be your cause, or those could just be something else that you're super passionate about. But your cause should be something that you are so passionate about that if I say right now, I need you to write me an essay on why this needs to change. And you can write for the next week and a half and still not get all your thoughts out. That's what your cause is. So find your cause. Find something that you feel so incredibly passionate about that there needs to be a change. Next, preach your message. This could be writing down poems. This could be having an open conversation about something. This could be starting a conversation about something. Just make sure whatever you're doing to fix the problem that you initially found, make sure that something is being documented. Don't let all your work go to waste, because that's going to be a sad day if you work and work and work and nothing comes of it. And finally, live your solution. Don't just say, I want to fix this, but go out and do it. The fact that I'm standing here now telling you that each of you has a voice and you can use it, you have words, so use them. That is basically my cause, my message, and this is my solution. Find something you're passionate about and write it down, tell someone about it, document it, and then go out and live the solution to it. So the best example I can give you is actually not me, even though I am holding a book of poems in my hand, my personal book of poems, I must say. And so one of the things that I think is so cool about poetry
is that it doesn't need to come from anywhere in particular. It can be things that are written down nice and neatly in a notebook because you have time to sit down and do that. Or it can be on pieces of notebook paper that have had coffee spilled on them 3 times and still you can read the words, so that works. Or my personal favorite, I'm sitting at work and I decide, I really, really enjoy that. So I'm gonna take the nice cards that we use to write orders on, and I'm gonna compose a poem on the back of it. That's poetry. Finding something in the moment, finding a moment you don't want to end and not letting it end. Capturing that moment in words so that everyone else can relive it and relive it and relive it. Which brings me to that example. This is Oscar Wilde. Yes, he's a bit funny looking, but he has changed so many lives. So Oscar Wilde was born into a very wealthy family. Both of his parents were doctors, surgeons to be exact. They had plenty of money. They were seen as the top of the top. It didn't get better than this. He decided real early on that is not the life for him. He did not like the money. He did not like the fact that he would have to go to school for years on end to make the money. He didn't like any of that. He loved his parents, but not what they had done with their lives. So he decided to go against everything that his parents said, and he went to school to learn language, rather than the science and stuff you need to become a surgeon. So his parents did not pay for him to go to school for this, but he believed enough in himself and in the power of language that he did it anyway. He went and he studied, did all that stuff, all the logistics. And then he came out and he just started writing. All of this stuff that had been pent up inside him, he just got it on paper. Whether it was good, bad, or ugly, he just wrote it all down. From there, we get things like the Ballad of Raugh, which actually was composed by Oscar Wilde when he was in prison. He went to prison for 12 years because he was living out his homosexuality. Some say that he was the first person to initiate this in Europe, but that's up for debate depending on who you are. So he felt enough about this cause that he wrote it all down, and then he went out and even went to jail for it. He thought it was so important that people have a voice, that people can be themselves, that he didn't just want to say it. He wanted to do something about it. So he went to jail for it. And that's where we got this. He sat down in prison, and it's actually a pretty long poem. I definitely recommend it, but make sure you have time, because it's a bit lengthy. But it's definitely worth the read. He finds those poetic moments while he's in jail. He finds the fact that someone can be walking around the jail yard so happily. He finds the fact that the sky is so beautiful from his jail cell. There's an entire stanza on how flowers that are growing just outside the yard are so breathtaking. He can't get to them, but he sees them. And he doesn't want that to end. And it's pretty cool, the fact that he can find those poetic moments in such a bad situation. Eventually, he got let out of prison and continued his life. But the fact that he's in prison for living out the solution to the problem he already identified and still wants to find those moments to live in the moment, to live in the poetry around him is pretty cool. And I think that he would be pretty pleased to see how far we've come from what he started. The fact that a gay teenager can stand here right now and tell you about the power of poetry and the power of words, I think he'd be impressed. But none of that happened during his lifetime. I guarantee you none of that would have happened if he hadn't written it down. So that's my challenge to you. Go home, grab a notebook. Doesn't need to be a fancy notebook. It could be little cards from work. And just start putting your thoughts down on paper. If you find a moment throughout your day that you want to relive, if you see a friend you haven't seen in a while, write it down. Write down the emotions you're feeling. Write down how just overwhelmingly amazing that is. Write down the fact that I got to wear a bow tie today while I'm giving this talk. Find those moments. But then find the cause that those moments go against. Figure out why wearing a bow tie for me is so freaking awesome. Find the cause behind it. And then go back and write down why you want to change it, what there is to change. Convince someone else that it needs to be changed. And then live out the solution that you found. Don't just sit by and do nothing. Find that moment right before the storm and live in it forever through your words, through your actions. Thank you.